All right, and we are live. We are live indeed. Mico, I am so glad that you're here. It's gonna be fun. You're good people.
Yeah.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
I think me and you always have fun though. This is this is
We were talking about this right before we pressed record, which is like, how do we know each other? So let me do a quick intro. Because speaking of fun, we have too much fun together.
yeah.
You and I know each other through a council that we're on where we advise startups and tech companies. DA Davidson,
Yeah.
shout out to DA Davidson. Um, and yeah, they're amazing.
They
And
are.
we just have had so much fun over the years now. Can you believe it's been years that we've been doing this?
Love
And
it.
we're finally getting together live. You have one of the most unbelievable backgrounds. I remember the first day we sat down to dinner at this long table full of
Yeah.
executives, and you're telling some of these stories of this incredible, work you've done with the government and data, and now with private industry and data.
Yeah.
And you are at the center of what's cool, new, scary, exciting,
Fun.
fun of the industry. So before we get into all my questions, because I have a million questions,
Yeah.
for those who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
All right, full transparency, I think I'm trying to keep up with you. Like I said, when I met
Don't
you, I was like power woman match here. This is
sing.
a rock
Yeah.
star. So I already knew you were a keeper. Anyways, okay, so I'm not good at bragging about myself, and I know you said that I need to talk a little bit more. So I
Yes.
will give the high
Yes.
levels.
Brag
So
away.
I've
Okay.
been in the data industry for over 10 to 12 years now. And it's funny you bring up the government because I usually don't even tell people I worked for the feds.
Ah. But
I
what
worked
you did for them is
I know.
insane, you guys.
No,
Yeah.
I know, but like
Huge.
it was during the war, and I did work for NCIS, DID, CIA. I mean, sorry, Pentagon. Yeah, Northrop Grumman. It is a part of my history because what happened is I worked for them. I even worked on the smart machine, the IBM smart machine, all doing data analytics stuff, some pretty heavy hitting stuff that actually affected the war and that were literally life and death, right? How many people do life and death stuff with a dashboard? I
Yeah.
did. And then I decided I was going to go back to corporate. So I ended up back in New York after that little stint because I remember telling Northrop Grumman, I'm like, I'm done.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is so much fun. I'm going back to corporate. And so I went to New York and then I started working as a contractor with Pfizer and a few other companies. But the high level of my background is I started in the business objects SAP LAN. And so back then I was fascinated with data visualization. The problem is that because my background is that of a data scientist and an engineer, I didn't know how to speak to people. So he
Ah,
said,
interesting.
right. So I could do all my models and all this fun stuff. And then I would get in and I'm like, why am I speaking Arabic? Like,
Right.
what is your
Focus.
problem? Like,
Right.
yeah, like why does it look like you have hieroglyphics in your eyes? Like what
What are
right?
these?
Like, what are we speaking? And I'm like, and what I did, I can prove it and I can tell you. And so that little journey, honestly, was so tough in New York. And it took me on
Mm,
this journey to where I said, how do people like myself figure out how to explain and communicate these brilliant things that we're creating, right?
right.
Like, how do we do it? Because I was interfacing with C-level executives and like VPs and chairmen of boards. So I didn't have a lot of chance to figure it out, right?
Right.
And so I went on this journey, which I know we'll get into deeper, where I jumped into the data storytelling, KPI requirement gathering world. Fascinated, built a huge reputation. Fast forward to today, 2 million miles later. As you know, I've been around the
Yeah.
world and back. I
Yeah.
have
It's
taught over
amazing.
20,000 people. I have spoken at Google. I was just at Meta again, which I spoke at it when it was Facebook, then Meta. I've spoken at MIT, Harvard. I mean, you name it. So I definitely am fascinated. I've been written up in about 5 to 6 books. I'm an author. I have a top 2% global podcast called Analytics on Fire. I advise startups. So I work with a couple of VC firms on that. I mentor, I coach. And then I have my day job, which is kind of fun, where I wanted to go into startup world. It's not torture. There's a cute company that's called Acral Data, and we are like the number one metadata platform. And so I hit this like point during the pandemic where I was like, I want to get back into community. I want to get around people. And so I actually manage a community of almost 10,000 plus data engineers in Slack for Data Hub.
Wow. Wow.
So, so yeah,
Okay.
that's why I have the shirt for Acro Data. So there's I just love data and I just love people. And that's where you met me, right? We kind of met in the bush in Montana.
That well, and that's the other thing is, and we were in this gorgeous retreat that they had set up for us, and we're
Big
sitting on
sky.
this bus. We can't stop talking, and
Yeah.
I'm like, "You're such good people." I mean, and if you're
Same
not
here.
following Mico, you need to. It is unbelievable some of the things that you do, that you're building, the folks that you're
Thank
working
you.
with, the problems that you're solving, and it's a number one, top 10 at least problem that our industry is facing right
Yeah.
now, right? And all industries
Absolutely.
across verticals are facing right now. So, but you
Mhm.
brought up another good point is, okay, you're building and doing all these wonderful things. How do you make it relevant? So, how
Yeah.
do you do storytelling with data? What does that actually look like? So, before we kind of even like scratch the surface of that, because I know, we never have enough time on these things.
Yeah.
What kind of people do you even encounter on data teams? What does that even look like?
So if you want me to be honest, and this is going to be brutal what I'm about to say, but it's my own
I love
experience, so
it.
please don't
What
take it
I
as
do like
personal. What we tend to attract on a lot of data teams is people whose EQs are not up to par.
that.
Okay?
That's fair.
Data
Okay.
is yeah, it's a rough answer, and the reason I say that is data is literally a hospitality product. Okay,
Okay.
meaning that if you don't like being in hospitality where you have
Yeah.
to give a lot of TLC to users, to their emotions, to this is not the right field for you, right? If you
Right.
think just like it was like me, if you think the data being right and you having all the data is gonna get everybody on board, you are, I mean, that was a slap in my face, right? So the first thing that I did before I even answered a data team question is I had to get my EQ in check. I actually get tested
Mm.
every 5 years.
How do you do that?
Yeah, so I'll link to it in the talk, but there is a
Okay.
lovely guy named Jay. He is a monk
Oh,
and
not what I
he
thought you were going
trains
to say. Okay.
executives. Right, he trains
Oh my.
executives. He's out in LA. He's an
Okay.
amazing man, and he tests my EQ. And I have made a lot of strides. I've been very intentional because I was one of those low EQ people who just didn't understand the things that weren't said.
Right. Yeah, I
Right?
get that. And there's a ton of resources out there. I mean, there's even free ones. Like
Yes.
I love Charisma on Command. I know I've talked about it a ton. And then there's organizations, Continuum does a lot of enablement around that, including
Yes.
frankly executives. You'd be shocked, Fortune 10s, 20s that we are training on how do you do this. So you're not alone. I think that's the other part of it is a lot of times people feel like they're alone in this.
Yes.
Everyone else is so good at this, and then they see you and you're so talented and you're so well spoken and you're so brilliant, and they go, well, she was born like that. And
Oh
it goes, no,
no.
this is so intentional. Yeah, this is
Oh yeah,
this is
it's
an investment.
so much work. Like I spent for those who embark on this EQ thing and then we can move on. I spent 3 years just trying to get point 0.4 on one of my EQ scores. Zero
Wow.
point 0.4. I mean, it's work. Like you have and you're in the business of doing this in your company, right? Like EQ is so important.
100%.
So I just want to point that out because I don't think people talk enough about it. And I know with me,
I
if I
agree.
didn't check that and put in the work, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
And I think a lot of people, I know even, in our own organization, they're so incredibly brilliant. I like to call them unicorns. So they go,
Yeah.
oh, that EQ stuff, I don't even need that. What are you talking about? Or storytelling, that's for sellers. I'm not a seller.
Right.
What do So, I mean, I guess,
So wrong.
let's start there then. Let's talk about that. Reports are great, dashboards are great.
Yep.
But how do you make movement? How do you move an
How do you get
organization
people?
or a piece
Yeah.
of an organization? How do you move people?
Well, the first thing is going back to your first question, which is understanding what type of people you encounter when you're dealing with data. So I'm going to give
Okay.
you guys a few avatars, and I think your audience, somebody's going to be nodding their head going, yeah, that sounds like the person I just met with.
Yeah.
So we have a few of my favorite avatars, right? And you have to, because they always say first understand, then seek to be
Right.
understood. So
Right.
the first type of person you encounter is what I call the Excel sheet lover. Those are the people that tell you, just give me the data. You're like, well, what if we try to I just want my data. Okay. Those type of personas, Sabrina, you just say, all right, hit download. Let me make it self-serve. I'll put the button on your phone if you want. Let them go about their business. Like I personally think we spend too much time trying to bring those people over, and it's very
Mhm.
painful. You then
Yeah.
have the person that loves dashboards. This is my favorite
Uh-huh.
one, right? The problem is that if you ask people what a dashboard is, some people think it's a single chart, some people think it's a spreadsheet, and other people think it's actually like a visualization, right?
Right.
So those type of people are fascinating because they get like dashboard fever is what I call it, and
Oh,
everything has to be visualized.
okay. All right.
Okay.
Dashboard fever. You heard it here first. Okay.
Dashboard fever. And those are the type of people, by the way, that get into the creative mode. So they often would tell you exactly how many charts they want a dashboard.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Then you have the people that they engage and they're usually in denial in something which I call deep gut analysis. So
Mm.
what will happen is you'll present a bunch of data to them and you'll say, here you go, this is what happened. Like you'll have all your facts and they'll say, I guess they'll you sit back and they go,
I know that.
Sabrina, I've been
Hmm.
around for about 20 years here.
Right.
It doesn't feel right.
Right. You're like,
Right. Right. Right.
but
But right.
the
And
data. Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they often describe data in a way where I usually respond and say, is the data sick? Because we're talking about feelings. Does it have a cold? I know it's being a smart, but like, not that you telling me how it feels. I'm going, I have the data. So they're
Right.
usually in denial and they rely on their gut no matter what you do. Then
Yeah.
you have the people, my favorite too, that they are data driven. And they are
Hmm.
so data driven crazy that they forget to include people be any type of like emotional quotient, any type of
Right.
education. They see a number and it's black and white.
Right.
Data informed is where we need to be. So if you understand these common avatars, Sabrina, it's a lot easier when you get in a room to say, okay, let me understand each person. It's so much easier to start having a conversation around data.
Yeah. Right. Agree. Completely agree. Yeah. So, how do you become data informed? I mean, not to be the
Hmm.
behavioral analyst in the room, but it's hard to change. But I
It is.
do believe that people can change. So, is there a way to get people to be more data informed as opposed to some of those other profiles or avatars that, maybe can get them to understand, be curious, ask questions about the
Yep.
data, but then also kind of bring in the human element and the, organizational elements and all of that.
The
How do you get
experience.
there?
Yeah.
Right.
That's a great question and shameless plug. I did there's a company called Shopify. You know Shopify, right, Sabrina?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so my girlfriend, she's now the head of data at Meta, but my girlfriend Ella, she's actually the one probably like a couple of years ago introduced me to being data informed because Shopify at that point had done Kylie Jenner's store and they were growing in droves. And she was the one that said, Miko, we're not data driven here, we're data informed. And so I think that like what data informed is for those people who don't know what it is it's taken being data driven where you take the data at face value and you add people's experiences into it, right? So what does that look like? Right. What does that look like in real time? Okay,
Brilliant.
Sabrina, here's the thing, today we got a 20% conversion. And you look at me and say, all right, I see the data. And then you say, Miko, why? And I say, well, according to our stats and what came in is because of ABCD. And then you go, all right, I know we have a lot of people here who've ran things like this in the past. Does anybody have an opinion of maybe like what we need to do to fix this or why we got here? You listen to those opinions and then you say, okay, based on what we have here, let's come to a consensus of what we know, what we don't know, and what we think we should know. And
Okay.
somewhere in between putting those three together, I feel is where you get data informed. And I think it's also healthier because people feel included, right? Like I've been
Mhm.
sitting in this desk for 20 years, don't get me wrong, right? I appreciate the data, but I also have been doing this for 20 years.
Right. Right.
So I've seen a few things, I've
Right.
seen a few things, right? And so I think it's important to make sure that you include people and be in data informed is balance. Now, with that said, Sabrina, AI is coming. And
It's
AI,
yeah.
it's here and it can bring in things in the past that we could not
Yeah.
calculate, we could not adhere for. So I do think while I'm saying this, I do feel that with the inclusion of AI, this is going to take on a whole new level because AI will process third party elements and other things. They'll take our conversation, the whole meeting, and come up with something completely like we didn't even know existed, right? So I just want to put that in there, but that is what data informed is.
Do you have any projections that you want to put out there on how AI is going to sort of change, potentially even revolutionize, or is
Oh
it
boy.
way too soon?
Oh no. Oh no. I love AI. So I mean, didn't I tell you this when we were talking? Like we were catching up. Nothing to do
Probably,
with this. But I
probably, yeah.
I think I told you that like AI, one of my favorite case studies for AI is that I go in. I have ChatGPT, Gemini, and is it Bard? I just have a lot of AI tools, right? And one of the things I do when I'm busy is I put in like the 5 ingredients in my fridge. We're busy women. And I'm like, I have 15 minutes. What can I make?
Yeah.
And it legitimately puts out recipes. It's like, oh, with these 5 ingredients, only use 4 of them. You could make this in 10 minutes. Like, I mean, just taking away the thinking level for this stuff is just so expansive. And I personally use AI every day. With that
Mhm.
said, I think when it comes to data visualization, particularly in dashboard and data storytelling, I think AI is going to impact it in a few ways. One, there's always a top question, for instance, when we were working with clients on dashboards, like, how do I find KPIs? Like, what are my competitors doing? That's a
Yeah.
prompt,
Yeah.
right? Just my competitor is Coca-Cola. Can you show me Coca-Cola metric? It just comes up. So the research time is cut down. The second thing is a sanity check, which is like, these are our metrics. This is our business. Tell me what we
Mm-hmm.
should be measuring,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So you can not only get what you should be measuring, but you can get input on what you should be measuring as a benchmark against competitors. So competitor intelligence, I think, is going to be more accessible. Then there's the visualization aspect and the storytelling aspect. Here are my metrics, here's the data. Tell me a story, and you can pick the avatar that will work for the lovely Sabrina, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous,
How do
ambitious
I?
30 something year old, multi dynamic, super intellectual, super beautiful. Like, tell me how to tell her this story. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And legitimately, it can ingest some of your videos and stuff and say, this is how to talk to Sabrina,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's
It's
pretty
crazy
powerful.
train. And then last but not least, visualize it.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
auto does it. So I think the sky is the limit on what could be done. Like, I haven't even scratched the surface.
Yeah. And that's what's so amazing is that we're just at the beginning. That we're just at the beginning of this. So what does that mean? And I know we're already at time. We're watching the time, but I want to at least get this in there because your opinion just matters so much to me. What does that mean for folks who are trying to tell a story now with data? Do you have guidance
Yeah.
for them? Obviously there are AI tools. There's a lot of privacy and other concerns around using AI. But storytelling with data is one of the most important things you can do. To your point,
I agree.
you need to pull in the person, the human element of it. But what kind of guidance maybe do you have for folks that are in this right now?
All right. Well, my first shameless plug is check out. We have our own data storytelling method that we have taught
Okay.
20,000 students, and we are keeping our methodology up to date. So I'm currently in the process of like updating it to include AI. So that's one thing. The
Okay.
other thing I think is, I do think a transformation, Sabrina, is coming in our jobs where instead of people asking us to generate AI and stories, they're going to ask us how to create the prompt. Like, I think that the question is going to be, hey, I tried this prompt to get my dad, could you help me with a prompt? So I think that we have to become the masters and users of how to get the right things out of AI, because we're soon going to become the assistants.
Right. Interesting. That's a
So I
very
think,
interesting
does
observation.
that make sense? So I hate to say you're going to
Really?
become an AI prompt engineer, but I think we're going to go from, hey, Miko, can you build my dashboard, to, hey, could you look at my prompts? I did like 10 of them, but the dashboard's not coming out great.
Right. It's not exactly what I need. Yeah.
Correct.
Interesting.
And so you're going
We
to
could
be
have
able to
a whole
help
other line
them.
about just this.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I think. So become the master, right? Start to, by using it, you learn how to make your prompts concise. Like one of the things I do is I re-engineer my prompts, right? So when I go
Mhm.
through and I finally get what I want, I go back and re-engineer the entire thing and say, all right, how can I get this down to 2 lines or 1 line? And I think that's going to be a very, very useful skill.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And I think what's interesting is, or what's also interesting is there's always going to be the human element. I don't think we can ever just offload to AI and say, okay, we're
Absolutely.
done, you know, because there's always going to be this human element of how to, again, back to the storytelling, because you're telling stories to other humans to evoke action, right? To evoke change, to evoke more of the same, whatever it might be. So maybe let's end with this, because I do want to understand, kind of back to the profiles or the avatars that you mentioned. How do you have guidance on how do you cater to those different profiles and tell stories?
Well, that's a good question, and I know we want to get off there, but I do want to send your audience to check something out because I said this on on Meta's stage in December, and people were like in shock. One of the things that they tout about AI is the IQ, right? If you look in the news, all they're touting is, I think they said that the AI is going to be 150 times smarter than any human being in 3 years or something or next year. Have you ever noticed they don't ever mention the EQ of AI? Do you know why? Because
No,
while
why?
the IQ is shooting through the roof, there's literally a Japanese billionaire who put $4 billion and counting into trying to raise the EQ of his robot, and it's still that of a 4-year-old. So for all those people who are afraid to build on what you said, sorry, I know we're going to get off that, but I need to
No,
insert
this
that
is
in
so
there.
good. Are you going to talk to you for hours? This is so
Yeah, go
interesting.
online and look it up. All these headlines about IQ, right? Talking about controlling the narrative. Just go look up the EQ section of
Yeah.
all these AI robots and all this stuff. It's very low, and they're trying to fix it, but it's very low, which is why they're afraid that robots take off, and they don't want robots shooting guns without humans because they don't have the EQ component they don't have empathy.
Yeah. And that's the answer, by the way. That's how you cater to the person side of it. You understand your roles and your profiles,
Correct.
because without it, you're just stuck
That's
back
right.
to I have data, however they need to adjust it. And to your point, and so you're using these
Yeah.
tools exactly as that, as the tools. You are the EQ part of it. You're the one building the story. You're the one going back and checking the AI because it's not always right, not even close. So you
Yes.
become
Trust.
really the storyteller, right? And
Yeah.
these are just words on a page. Yeah,
Trust,
got
right?
it.
Because what will never replace, I feel, with the robots, I
Mhm.
think with the Gen Z generation, it'll be fine, but it has a ways to go to replace what we're doing right now,
Yeah,
which is Mico, trust Sabrina, and we're friends.
right,
You know what I
right.
mean? And you can't, the camaraderie and the comfort that we have with each other, you can't replace that with a robot.
100%.
So
100%.
that's why people will keep coming back to humans because you have that feel, you have the, whatever it is that is attracting us to each other, that is not visible in robots right now. So there is a human need, a human element that is required to make, and the key word is trust. To get trust, to get motivation, there is a human element that is going to be required for a while until they get the EQ sorted out.
Yeah, completely agree. Oh,
Yeah.
this is so good. I hope this has sparked so many more questions for
It's
everyone.
fun.
I'm sure we will see them in the comments. I always get DM'd. But Mico, thank you. Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for dropping in. Listen, if people want to follow you or learn more about you,
Yeah.
or understand what you're doing, where can they go?
Absolutely. So you can go to two simple places. One is my LinkedIn profile. I think I have about 20,000 followers. I'm very picky, so please say that you follow me on here because I just delete people that I don't recognize. So just be like Sabrina. That's all you gotta say, and I'll let you. I'll connect to you. And then I think the other thing is
And your
we
promo code. I love it. Thank
promo
you.
code. Sabrina's a promo code.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't do random folks, believe it or not. And then the
Oh,
other
I
thing is
believe it. Yeah.
I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wackos. And then there is our podcast. My podcast is Analytics on Fire, which expecting Sabrina to be on as well. And so we're top 2% in the world. So you guys can check us out. We're on every forum, and we just joined LinkedIn Live and YouTube. And then everything is from there. We have our data
Yeah.
storytelling method. And of course, I have to plug Data Hub. If you're doing metadata, check us out.
Awesome.
So yeah, just go to my LinkedIn.
Awesome. It is always a pleasure. I'm so incredibly proud of you. Excited for
Same
what's
here.
ahead. This is just the beginning. This is
Yeah.
just the beginning. So
Yeah.
thank you for being on, and I will see you again soon.
Thank you. This is awesome. Thank